G'day internet. Right. Chilly, aren't it? Right, took my hood off. Put that back on. Might set up my wee hand warmer. So I thought I'd do a wee update on the new nano capsule house thingy thing I'm doing. So as per, I think the last video I did, I've been very generously given a big roll of fiberglass and some plastic, clear plastic sheets, and I'm going to use them now for my windows instead of the idea of using cheap picture frames. The cheap picture frames were cool because they're all sort of standard sizes, so getting replacements if you broke the very thin glass, which was reasonably likely to happen, wasn't going to be a problem. Also, you could get two picture frames, load both bits of glass into the same frame with a wee gap between to make double glazed windows, blah blah blah. There are a few different things you can do. However, free is always better than cheap, and I got given some acrylic plastic stuff for free. Advantages with acrylic plastic, even though it's not in that great nick, it's a bit scratched and stuff, is that it's much harder to break, it's a bit flexible, and it's probably better for this kind of unit. So what we're going to do, figured out the construction method. We're going to cut little window spaces in the bits of wall that I've indicated previously, and possibly some on the roof, maybe in the door, that are a little bit smaller than the sheet sizes that I'm going to be using. And then we're going to, on the outside, recess into the foam by the thicknesses of those sheets, and tack them into place with a bit of glue or some double-sided tape, doesn't really matter. Then I'm going to fiberglass the exterior and fiberglass those windows into place. If they ever do break or anything, it'll just be a case of cutting them out and then replacing them with more plastic or whatever else. It doesn't really matter. It's unlikely to happen. Acrylic plastic's, like I said, a little bit flexible, quite light, and good for what we're trying to achieve. So, if I haven't shown this thing before, by the way, this is my wee hand warmer. It's quite cool. It runs on lighter fluid. You don't actually light it per se. It's got a little, I think it's palladium. It's not a very cheap material, but a very small amount of what I think is palladium or something else that starts with P, a bit of a strange metal that interacts with hydrocarbons. And has an exothermic reaction that generates heat chemically. Fucking effective bit of kit. Gets very hot, which is great. Just fill it with lighter fluid there, and then let that tube in, and then we just have to heat the top of it with a lighter to get the reaction going, and then it runs for hours. It's great. Anyway, one of the many things you use when you live outside for keeping warm, especially in cold temperatures. Back to the house. So yeah, we've got a game plan underway to get our main structure complete, and after that it'll just be painting the interior and the exterior, and then stage 1 and 2 will be basically complete. After that point we can possibly play around with little add-ons of the air conditioning unit, heater system type. Has that started going yet? Alright. And yeah, that's about where we're at. So all I need to do cash-wise for continuing doing my fiberglassing, I did some research the other day and did indeed find some epoxy that will, or should, there we go off, set properly, even in cold temperatures. I found a product that will work as low as 4 degrees, so during the day here, even in winter, that should be most of the time okay. Just hope for some good weather. Usually only goes down to 0 or near there at night, so yeah, we should be pretty good. Chuck that down the back of the neck there. Oh, toasty. Yeah, I figured out how I'm going to hinge the door on once I cut the sheet of foam today that sort of I can actually jam it in place here. Currently I haven't because I've still got my normal pants on and whatnot. I'm going to be helping him out with some construction at some point when he finishes his other tasks, so didn't want to bother taking my boots off and stuff, so I've just got my legs hanging out the side of the door at the moment. But normally this open space you can see to my left would be filled with foam now as well. I've got a piece of foam that jams in place, and later on that will be recut to be a little bit looser fit so that I can fiberglass it, and I'll have a solid fiberglass and foam panel which will form my door. It may have a window in it as well, or I may put some in the roof, I don't know. We'll figure it out. This thing's basically gone from being a sort of, we designed it this way and we're doing it this way, to the point I'm at now. This is all on drawings and pretty much exactly how I designed it. to now it's the fun part where I get to just kind of make crap up as I go along and build it a bit more like a sculpture than I do like a house, or any sort of engineering type thing. So that's cool. A bit more my department, because I'm quite messy with building and stuff, and I like to just kind of have a basic idea and go at it. It's enjoyable. So anyway, speaking of things like this, micro housing and whatnot, today and last night I watched some videos that were sent to me by friends, and that just sort of came to me through the internet, social media suggestions on YouTube and so forth type stuff, that were boat must be coming into harbour. I live above a port. Oh, shut up. Yes, I know you're there. Shush. Zag. Right. Yeah, we're about some of them were about running your own shit and working for yourself as an artist, as I do, and better ways to do that. One of the things that I pulled from one of those videos by a chap, I suppose you call them a they now. There used to be a chap called Little Swastika, it's a tattooist and quite famous artist whose work I follow a fair bit of. And I'm pretty impressed with their vision and their general idea set. They now call themselves Lily Lou. By all means, look them up. You think I'm freaky with a few face tats? This cat's like covered. They've got mad mods and everything. They're really cool and interesting. Very much into a lot of the concepts that I'm into, in terms of art and living differently and alternatives to the standard way to live, and a lot of stuff like that. Anyway, I was interested to see they'd put up a video that was related to sort of how to, live off your own work and how they get around doing what they're doing, because the sort of life they appear to have on the internet, you think, like, Jesus Christ, where's all your money coming from? Like, you're doing all this stuff and how they do it on the cheap. Yeah, it was very interesting to me. One of the big points they made out was they don't smoke or drink. I do both. And it's been pointed out to me a couple of times by friends recently, that given the cost of cigarettes now in New Zealand, and my regularly smoking them, if I didn't smoke, I could probably actually afford to just live in a flat. Not that I'd want to, that's not my path or what I want to do in existence, but I'd certainly appreciate the more money available. It would give me more options in terms of being able to rent space to put my micro house systems for cash, instead of having to do dobby work for people cleaning and doing things like I do here. I mean, I don't mind that much, but it's an hour or two out of every day running errands and doing bits and pieces like that, and it interrupts my sort of thought flow in terms of doing art. I really liked, for instance, living in Queenstown, where I could go days at a time without seeing or even hearing another soul, and that allowed me to just really focus in on my work and just sit there for hours on end with nothing else to do but draw. And that's something I really want to get into. But as I say, with the smoking and stuff, I would really also like more at ease with cash. I'm definitely earning enough now as an artist, doing tattoo and drawing and things that I do, to, especially given my low living expenses, to live quite comfortably. And my next stage of this project, for instance, I need $200 for this epoxy that I've discovered that will cure in the times required with the cold air and all the rest of it. It's going to cost me about $200. I think I should just about make enough money this week to be able to buy that and buy food. But if I include a cigarette or drinking budget, hell fucking no, there's no way I could include that. And I still owe the bar quite a bit on my tab and stuff that I'd like to pay off this week and just get that cleared. So my sort of personal development focus at the moment is I've decided that after the packet of cigarettes I'm currently on, I'm done. I'm going to stop smoking again. I've done it before. I think the longest I ever quit before was about 6 months. So it's a doable thing. It'll be a bit of a fiddle for me for a bit, but I just can't justify smoking anymore. I mean, it's not like it does something useful for my art or my psychology or anything. It's just a habit and an addiction, and I know I have the mental wherewithal to end it, so may as well. Anyway, that's sort of just a random tangent beside the point there. That'll make me some more money. I'm making mature and responsible decisions about the limited funds I have available so that I can put more money into stuff like this. And after that, my art. There's a lot of things I'd like to do with little projects for my houses that I build, and aircon units and things like that. And I'm constantly coming across, let's spend $50 and we could like have a bit of an experiment and try and build this heater system or something like that. And it's like, but I just spent all that money on cigarettes, and if I don't have those, I'll go mental or whatever. And it's like, no, I won't. It'll be hard for the first couple of weeks, and then after that'll be fine. Anyway, so yeah, we're making responsible decisions and trying to improve ourselves in our lot in life. The other videos I was watching were to do with stuff to do with micro-housing and homeless people building themselves little huts in the bush and things like that in different countries. And there was this one in Germany that was really interesting. A guy had done this thing in Berlin, and his hut was huge. bigger than anything I've ever built, homeless or otherwise. And not well camouflaged either, so he'd been quite rapidly discovered doing what he was doing. But in his country, he was able to pull this thing that they have a constitution that guarantees the right to dignity of life or something like that, and he was able to politically use that to get himself some leeway using media attention and a few other little sneaky tactics there to get the council basically off his back for having this basically a legal hut in the bush for quite a while. It sounded like he was there for a couple of years or so. And then, some people sort of helped him out and did some crowdfunding for him, like, okay, we're going to disassemble the hut, put it on a trailer, and go put it in this other place where we're allowed to set up like a tiny house village kind of thing, and they're really interested in what he's doing and how he's doing, so they've actually employed him as a consultant, and really cool result to his overall project. Good for him. It was also interesting to see how somebody else goes about doing this kind of self-designed and constructed using cheap materials, personal shelter, what they do for cleaning, what they do for water, what they do for heating, what they do for power and stuff. There were a lot of decisions made there that were very different to the ones I've made. Not any more or less valid, just different. This guy prioritised space a lot more than I do, by the looks of it, and a few other bits and pieces. So it was quite interesting because in New Zealand we don't have a constitution. We have Te Tiriti o Waitangi, or in English if you prefer, the Treaty of Waitangi, and that's the closest thing we've got. It's an agreement between the British Crown in the old colonial days and the Māori tribes, or the ones at least who signed up to it, here in New Zealand, or Aotearoa. So one of the things we don't have in New Zealand due to that and a few other factors is things like squatters' rights. No such thing here. There's no sort of, we've occupied this building for 2 years now, therefore it's ours, or anything like that you can do in other countries like in Europe or whatever. And that means that when I run my sorts of projects and stuff, we have a little bit less leeway. So I have had to focus a lot more on camouflage. When I've, say, last project where I was out in the bush was in Queenstown a few months ago. I was there for 4 months, and I left on the minor end of the scale due to some social issues and lack of work available and things like that, but primarily due to the fact that the site I was using kept trying to kill me. It was very inaccessible and quite dangerous to access, especially if the weather even rained, let alone snowed. And yeah, some friends here in Christchurch, when I visited them before it even really hit winter, were like, dude, it's going to get that cold there, it's going to snow, how the fuck are you going to down climb a cliff in the snow if you get sick, or you need to go get some food, or whatever other reason you've got for leaving site? You could well get snowed in there and be unable to move and starve to death, or die of cold, or this is not safe. And that was on top of me accidentally almost falling off cliffs a bunch of times and a few other things like that. So, but the point there is, not so much that the site kept trying to kill me, is that I had to use a site that kept trying to kill me so that I'd have something inaccessible enough that I could get away with what I was doing. The last site I used, I was there for 50 days, actually, 49 and a half, before I left, and no one found me, which was really cool. Now the reason I do stuff like that, and that I'm actually, this video is going to be sort of about, I guess, me planning to do something quite similar, although hopefully a little safer here in Christchurch, is because one of the problems I've found with, shall we call it, alternate ways to live. So everything from being homeless all the way up to tiny housing and, right at the bottom of the poverty heap, all the way up to just before you've just got a regular house that you either rent or own. The key problems, there's two of them, have got nothing to do with technology, how to build this stuff, how to know how to do electronics and all the sciencey things that go into doing this stuff well, or anything like that. These are things you can learn off the internet very easily, if you don't already know them. The two problems are people's attitudes and bureaucracy. So they're basically the same problem, in effect. So, in detail, bureaucracy, being what it is, always lags miles behind technology. Pick any sort of technology and I'll tell you how far behind the law is on what you are and are not allowed to do. Drone law is a great example. Drones got way ahead and we're selling all over the place, and every kid's got one, and they're really cheap and easy to get before everyone, civil aviation administrations and the FAA in the States finally got on board and went, hey, we're going to upgrade the laws on what you can and can't do and figure out ways to control airspace without hopefully smashing this technology too much, because it's just out there everywhere, and now we've got kids flying their drones in their airports and endangering full-size aviation because they're idiots. Bureaucracy is always behind the curve, and then they rush to get bureaucracy to catch up with technology, and they generally fuck it up, which they did with drones in practically every country in the world. The laws that are now in place here in New Zealand and everywhere else are to some degree or another completely suboptimal in terms of for purpose, for safety, and for allowing the technology to exist and continue to develop without too much government involvement and hassle and money. Anyway, that's just an example. Another example, and the one that's more relevant, is this kind of stuff. See, one of the reasons I've built this small is because I can, and claustrophobia isn't a problem for me. I like the physics of it. Smaller volume spaces are easier to heat and cool, and there's various other things like that. Obviously very cheap because less materials, they're lighter, and they're easier to move, and the key point is moving, because you have to all the fucking time. In a lot of ways, this kind of thing is no better than being homeless, because at any point, some asshole can basically take away your space. A neighbour can complain that you're on your friend's rented or owned property, and they don't like you being there out the back. The kind of stuff I've heard from people, especially down here in the south of New Zealand, it's less so up north, but Christchurch and Queenstown, you hear a lot of people like, well, I have to pay rent and I have to do this, I don't see why you should be able to live for free, you bloody bum. It's like, well, you can live the way I do too. You just have to sell all of your equipment and ditch all of your, magical materialistic possessions that you've got, and you can live this way too. Do you want to? No, of course you don't. So shut up. But they don't. They're pissed and they whinge and they moan and they get involved in other people's business, and then bureaucracy has to get involved. Basically, one of the things I like about bureaucrats and councils is they can't be fucked chasing everyone up. So they generally only do anything about tiny houses, micro houses, this kind of thing, if someone makes a complaint. But that means that when I'm doing my stuff, even if I'm on land that I own, let alone a friend owns, or rents legally or whatever, I constantly have to be aware of how much noise I'm making, where I'm putting stuff, how visible I am, who knows where I'm at and stuff like that, in case someone makes a complaint and has a fucking problem, and either makes problems for the people who I'm staying with or whose house I'm outside of, or makes problems directly for me. And that's really, really annoying, because technologically speaking, with 4 square meters of space, this unit occupies 2 of them, I can put a little deck and eaves out the front or off to one end of it, and set up so I've got a little shower toilet composting unit that fully filters human waste, water, all those kinds of things, has a composting unit and everything, 0 waste there, and also has a little other unit either end or somewhere else, very small thing I've designed that allows me to combust, like furnace burn everything else that might be waste, metals, tin cans, plastic, whatever else you like, in a way that produces no exit to atmosphere. When I get around to building this thing and find somewhere to do it, I will obviously do videos on how this is done, but you'd be surprised how simple and easy it is to create a fire system that very efficiently and cleanly destroys waste. I've done project systems on this kind of thing before. Really, really easy to do. But the problem is finding somewhere where I can do that, and only 4 square meters of space, and I'm set, where we're not going to have problems. See, a few years ago, the first micro house I built, with much gratitude to the people whose house I was using at the time, their backyard, and the people who funded the project and so forth. Cheers everyone, that was really awesome. I'd still have that now if it wasn't for these sorts of problems. The unit was small enough that it fit inside all of the bureaucracy and legal stuff. A neighbour complained about the first one I had. I don't know, for those of you who watched the videos at the time, you'd be aware of this. It was very funny at the time. A neighbour complained, and all I had to do, because a council compliance officer turned up, he was very impressed with what I'd done. He loved the build, he loved the architecture, the engineering, everything I'd done with it. All I had to do was move it by 1.5 metres closer to the person who'd actually complained to make it legal, and that was fine. But eventually, those people left their rental property, and I had to move. And fortunately, before that point, we'd realised when we'd done the move to comply with the council stuff, that the unit I'd built weighed about half a tonne, which for something to live in is incredibly light, but it wasn't on a trailer, so it was incredibly hard to move. And we realised that, eventually this was a rental property, these people are going to move at some point. It turned out they did it only a few months later, actually, but at some point. So I just disassembled the unit and rebuilt it as a much smaller one that only weighed 300 kgs. And was easier to move around, which was very fortunate, because a few months later I did have to move. And this is the thing. Wherever you put a microstructure, a tiny house, a caravan, an RV, a van that you live in, a houseboat, anything like that, at some point someone's going to come along, it seems, and have a problem of some sort and require you to shift. And that is why I go as small and as light as I do, and I focus on mobile structure systems. It's really unfortunate because longer term, I want to find somewhere with about 4 square meters of space, preferably with some trees and a nice view, where I can build in a sense that's not designed to move at the drop of a hat. To do a proper composting toilet system that feeds a small garden and does some other stuff like that, or otherwise does no damage to the environment. The long-term goal I have is an absolute zero waste structure, so stuff comes into it, nothing goes out, produces no gases, produces no literal physical waste of any sort, processes everything on site. This is entirely possible to do. The technology's old hat. It's really, really simple stuff. And I very much look forward to being able to actually put it all together and do videos of how it's all done, so I can finally show people what this looks like. But the point is, if it wasn't for that move around thing, I'd still have tiny house number 1. It was a good design. By this point, I would have added insulation like this stuff to it. I would have added a better air conditioning system. I probably would have had a different solar panel setup than I started with. There were a few other things I would have done. Maybe if we'd built it on a trailer out the front of the house I was at instead of round the back, I might still have had it. I don't know, but yeah, that was the thing. Mobility was a huge thing, and it wasn't because it was particularly necessary. It was just, that's how these things work. You need to be able to shift because someone's always going to fuck with your shit. It's not even really bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is a long way behind what is possible and what people like to do and what people are doing in reaction to rising cost of living and just for interest's sake and stuff these days. But it's not even really bureaucrats, because bureaucrats don't get involved unless someone complains most of the time. A good example would be a tiny house forum I'm on here in New Zealand. Recently there was a story on it about a bunch of people who are desperately looking for somewhere else to put their tiny homes. There's quite a few of them, because a really cool farmer, this has actually happened quite a few places in New Zealand already, a really cool farmer has kind of gone, hey man, I've got heaps of spare land that I don't really use, I think this tiny house thing is cool, who wants to rent some space off me? And you set up a little village. You think on a farm out the way, it's idyllic, right? Lovely views, there's the birds and the trees, it's nice and quiet in the country. And then some arsehole moves in next door and decides to put up some holiday homes. It doesn't look like the way that looks. Or a neighbour just decides to get nosy and jealous and go, I don't like that, for whatever reason, and have a shit. They make a complaint. Council then has to enforce the law. And the law is anywhere near close to being able to deal with tiny homes as a system. There are multiple legal cases and problems going on in New Zealand where we're not sure, or the legal system isn't sure whether to qualify something as a live-in structure, or an RV, or a caravan, or a structure on a trailer, which is legal, or a house, which in some cases isn't. So tiny housing is just a legal minefield here in New Zealand. That's the only thing stopping it really pushing ahead. Meanwhile, we've got a housing crisis, and the government keeps saying they're doing all these things to deal with it. And hey, Labour government, I know how to deal with this problem. All you've got to do is make it easier to do tiny houses. Just make them their own separate classification or something, and issue an edict from, main government to all councils that says, leave these cunts alone. There's no problem with it. It's the most cheap, ecological, effective solution to New Zealand's housing crisis. And the great thing with most tiny houses is they don't even tax the electrical grid, or even if you let people, for fuck's sake, and stop bureaucracy being in the way, let people use composting toilet systems and whatnot, they don't even tax the water grid system and the waste system or anything. None of the bureaucracy that applies to housing. And, we must have standards for this because otherwise the thing will fall down. Well, that doesn't apply if it's not connected to the bloody ground. Earthquakes are not a problem when you're sitting on wheels and have suspension. We can only have so many people occupying a section. Yeah, well, that's related to wastewater connection and things like that, which, again, if you're running a self-contained tiny home, is irrelevant. You can pack 4 times as many people into a section. They all have plenty of room available. And nothing comes out of that section in terms of wastewater connect. There are a bunch of things like that. The tiny house, micro house, and nano house systems are able to deal with much better than traditional solutions. And the only thing in the way is bureaucracy. And the only reason that's enforced is because some arsehole gets jealous, has a problem, and complains. This has got to stop. Because my point of my video today is I've realised after some thought that my best option currently, even though I'm also making changes to my life to free up more money in my budget instead for cigarettes to potentially rent space off people and stuff, my best option is actually to go deliberately illegal. Do what I was doing in Queenstown, go find another spot in the bush, but take a unit, not camping, take a unit like this into it. That's why it's built so small and will eventually have wheels on it and stuff, because it's looking like within the next 6 months to a year I'm going to find a spot, hopefully around here in Littleton. I like Littleton, it's a cool place, and there's lots of really cool rocky terrain that isn't dangerous to access even in the snow, and is close enough to local supermarkets and things like that I use for backup, and friends that I have here, bus routes into town to buy artwork, all these kinds of stuff that I like to have. But that's looking like my best option, because anywhere that I rent space, someone's going to complain eventually, and I'm going to have to move anywhere. For me, it's a better option to just go into the bush where no one else is going, camouflage in so I can't be seen, and in my experience so far, that's your best option. Just putting it out there as advice for other people who do similar stuff to what I do as well. I have a lot of friends who've been doing it for years in Wellington. I've talked to older people, like people older than me, who've done it for years in places like Queenstown or elsewhere. Not like homeless, like they actually built a hut in the bush and just lived there for years. And yeah, doing the forest hermit things, if you're able, you don't have children, you're just a single person like me, you have a small mobile structure like this, blah 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 blah, or you're prepared to take materials into the bush to build one, there seems to be your best bet, and it shouldn't be. I have provable, road-tested systems that I've either built multiple times myself before, or heaps of people online have, and they're very easy to do, that allow you to create space and systems for one person or several people that occupy very little ground space. In my case, like I said, I need about 4 square meters for everything, and not only do that in terms of compact space usage and stuff, but are solar powered and fully self-contained, process all waste on site, so they're good for the environment and all this other kind of crap. Everyone's going on about declaring climate change emergencies and stuff in the government, but they're not doing anything functional when you think about it to really honour those commitments by, for instance, making it easier and less legal red tape and cost and bureaucracy to actually adopt better ways to live. They exist, the technology's there, it has been for ages. The thing in the way is assholes basically being able to use bureaucracy to can what is otherwise completely workable and best practice solutions to problems. If you're a single reasonably fit person like myself, your best option if you want to lower costs and not have to make as much money or spend the money you do make on other stuff, is to do something like this. This is the extreme end of the wedge. This is like nano, smallest you can go. Any smaller than this, the structure becomes basically wearable. So yeah, anything smaller than this, we're doing a spacesuit, which would be cool. But I like having my own little box to live in. So yeah, this is my thing. Bureaucracy is the problem, and bureaucracy is the way it is because of attitudes, and because we live in a democracy where assholes are allowed to vote as well. Well, I have to pay rent and do all this kind of stuff, and therefore I don't see why other people should be able to blah, and I don't want all those hippies living in that commune next to my house. This is basically the attitudes you're running into a lot of the time, and it's just ridiculous. I've got to be a little careful actually how loud I talk out here, because there are houses nearby. Fortunately, I think the one behind me is not very often occupied. It's usually an Airbnb. But I very much hope that I'll be able to get the structure complete, finished and done before somebody eventually complains to the team that I'm living out back at their bar and whatnot, complains to somebody about it, goes, oh, you can't have something there, and has a problem with it. It's highly likely to occur at some point. I have to be careful, just as I would be in the bush, about how much noise I make and how much light I emit at night and things of that order. So if I have to care like that, then I might as well just go into the bush. Here I have a shower available to me. It's a hot gas shower. And normal flushing toilet amenities. I still do my own I could use the bar kitchen, but I prefer to do my own thing. So I do all my cooking on gas. I'm still entirely capable of using the cleaning and toilet type methods I used when I was in the bush in Queenstown, which for those of you who don't know means piss through a filtration system that you make in the ground that filters your piss, and shit in a bag, and then compost that or dump it in rubbish or burn it. There's a few other things you can do to safely and ecologically friendly deal with human waste. And then shower wise, either you can go with occasionally coming into town and having a real shower, and the rest of the time you just sponge bath using wet wipes and things like that. It's entirely functional. It's not the greatest, but it's functional. Or with a bit of space available, like I said, 4 square meters or so, I can build a small shower unit. Actually, it's a separate module that goes right next to the one I'm currently in, that has a solar and or gas powered shower unit stuck into it, and also in the bottom of it has the waste destruction and processing system that allows you to, so basically it's a WC, like it's a combined shower toilet unit. Easy to build, love to do it, just don't have the space here. And that really would run us into problems in the council. This is an urban environment, and if somebody found out I was running a composting toilet shower unit up here that had its own filtration, I could show them all the science to prove that this was actually better than Wastewater Connect and the standard way of doing things, and it would still not tick somebody's boxes on a checklist and therefore be a fucking problem. That would get the people who are nice enough to let me stay out the back here in shit, so we ain't doing that. But what I want longer term is to find a I'm thinking it's probably going to have to be a rural or semi-rural property that's got some trees and stuff on it, because they're picturesque and nice, but also to hide my presence, at least some bushes or whatever, where there's like about 4 or 5 square meters of space that I can build the rest of the stuff that I want to build, I would rent that off a person for some money, or other times I've done stuff like what I do here. I do some cleaning work or whatever for these guys every day in their bar. Other places I have bartered tattoo work or artwork on a weekly basis, just for my presence and just for a basically donation for my presence there, because normally when I set up in a tiny house, here I am using a shower and a toilet, blah blah blah, like I've said, normally when I set up, and my ideal end goal is an absolute zero waste system that's totally self-contained, so I cost absolutely nothing to have on site. Ideally, I suppose somebody who actually realises that will be able to go, well, sure, use a corner in my back section for free, team. Doesn't cost me nothing, so why not? I'm surprised that not more people are comfortable with that kind of thing. If I owned land, that'd be the first thing I did with it. I just thought, well, okay, I need this much of the space that's available, and I've got this huge backyard I'm not doing anything with. Where's all my hippie mates and their house buses and shit? And I've lived places where people have done things like that, and guess what happened? Sometimes it was after decades, sometimes after only a few months, but some arsehole gentrified the area, put up some apartments, and someone in one of the new apartments complained about all the house buses and houses out the back, and complained to the council. Council comes through and says you have too many people on this site, or you're not allowed to have this many caravans in this area, or whatever else doesn't hit their checklist. And again, we're kicking people out of places they've sometimes lived for 15 or 20 years or more, because some rich arsehole moved in next door. It's almost invariably that's the problem. Yes, there is a lot of bureaucratic change that needs to occur. Hey, government. But a lot of it's attitude and societal change as well. This is why I focus so much of what I do on the aesthetics of it. This box unit I've built could be done cheaper and easier than what I'm going to be doing eventually with it. I don't need to spend $200 fiberglassing the outside of it and painting it all black and giving it cool looking windows and blah 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 blah. I'm pretty happy with what would amount to a hard tent with maybe one window in the side of it. I'm deliberately creating a structure that's got some architectural and artistic value to it, because it makes it easier to put it in places, because you can sell it to people as a cool looking thing, and that makes it easier to do. Otherwise, I basically start with an insulated box with a couch on the inside, no framework at all, cover it in a tarpaulin, and we're good and waterproof. And then if I'm in a bush environment, cover it with bush stuff, because then it just hobbit huts out. Otherwise, spray the tarpaulin black, we're done. And I could do this at half the cost I'm doing it at. The reason I'm doing it at the greater cost is because it gives me more options on where I can put it without getting myself or someone who's nice enough to let me use some space in this shed. The other reason it's this small, apart from mobility, is legality. There are no councils in New Zealand, anywhere, I've done quite a lot of research on this, that have any standing law or anything that would prevent you from putting this in your backyard. It's too small. Basically, if you had standing laws that affected this unit, especially given the fact that it's freestanding and has no power or wastewater or any other sort of connect like that, because of it being like that and being even smaller than a caravan and thus not counting as a caravan, the only way they could start interfering with this sort of structure legally is if they start screwing with you for having a garden shed, and they can't do that. So that's why we go this small. It gives me more options in places I can go, and hopefully more ability to not get complaints and get hassle and things like that. But I have that mobility, so that I can always say to people when I turn up at a place, if you get any complaints or there are any problems, I need a day to get this on a trailer and take it to wherever else. I've got backup sites I can use for a week or so at a time. I have some cousins who live over the other side of the hill, so if all of a sudden things go wrong here, that'll be my next port of call. but they're not sites I could use permanently, which is the problem. Longer term, I'm trying to find somewhere to do that, and it's increasingly beginning to look like, not that that's such a bad thing, living in the forest is fucking awesome, but like my best plan is to just lug this bastard into the forest, and do that there, because then as long as it's camouflaged and it's off a track out of the way where no one's going to find it, I could use 10 square meters of space. It doesn't matter. No one knows it's there, so I may well do that. I do miss the personal space and the quiet of living in the forest. It was very good for my internal peace and general mental health, and also my art. I've got a lot more work done and stuff. I'm finding living behind a bar is suboptimal at the best of times. I'm certainly not ungrateful to my friends for letting me stay here. It's cool, and they get a dobby out of it, so I clean their bar for them and whatnot. It's a pretty cool arrangement, but longer term, I don't know if it's going to work that well. So my idea is to basically have my unit fully constructed, painted nicely, windows in, all done, by around my birthday at the end of August, and then start quite seriously having a look for somewhere else to put the system. Which will hopefully be open to sky in a way that this area is not, so that I can start using my solar system again, because I put all that effort into developing a cool cheap one, which now just sits on the roof upside down, deactivated, because there's not enough light in the area I'm currently in to use it. So and there are other areas on this property I could use that do have enough light, but I can't put this unit on there because the unit would be too obvious. People would complain, and again we run into this problem with some dickhead making complaints, causing problems to my friends who are nice enough to let me stay here. On it goes. It's ridiculous, right? Anyway, if you're one of the people who watches my videos and you happen to have a reasonably largish section and has a bit at the back there in a corner where you've got a compost heap or something and you don't really use that area, maybe you want your yard cleaned up a bit and have some space available once that's cleaned up that I could fit into. As I said, this unit is 2 square meters on the deck, just under that actually, and I would prefer to put another 2 square meters out that way through the main door, to put a wee deck with some eaves and a little wee space to do my cooking and hanging out in the sun when the weather's good and shit. If you have something like that and you're happy to chuck me some land to use for small money or some other sort of arrangement, please contact me on Facebook, or even through the Google system here. If you're watching this video, then you can see what my page is, and I think you can click a button and message me through Google or YouTube or whatever the hell, some social media crap. Hi, my name's Ben Sampy. Type that into Google, you'll find something you can contact me on. But yeah, anything like that would be cool. It really would. I mean, I've built a structure now that's large enough, even though it's light and small, that transporting it out of Christchurch would cost too much to be worth it. So I do want something in Christchurch, or Littleton preferably. I like Littleton. The side of the hill is cool. The neighbours and locals here are rather more amenable to my style of living and my idea set than people on the flat on the other side there. But yeah, I mean, I've got people I know live in New Brighton and stuff. Anyone got some backyard I could use, that'd be really cool, because I don't know, I mean, longer term I want to be alone, really. I want my own space, I think. So yeah, well, I guess that really cans it, doesn't it? I mean, mid-term, next few years or whatever, I'm sure I can live on people's backyards and do things like that, but longer term I think I've just got to go bush, because honestly I'm never going to have enough money, I don't think, to buy even a small piece of land. The cheapest option I've ever thought of was forestry blocks. They quite often go quite cheaply in Canterbury. It's this country area away from where I am now. And maybe buy a forestry block, cut a few trees down in the middle of it, and put a unit in, or even string this unit up in some trees. That'd be fucking cool. So yeah, I'm looking at ideas like that. Still non-standard and stuff, and reasonably legal, but maybe not the letter of the law. But as long as you're camouflaged, who gives a shit? Because it seems to me that despite the effort I put into making these units, when they're complete, at least look neat and nice and architectural and quite cool, some dick's always got to come along and still have a fucking problem anyway, you know? Like, it's really irritating. I have, I think, friends who live in the country and stuff that I could probably wheedle a deal with, using one of their back paddocks or something like that, but then I'm miles out in the country, and I need help with them to get transport into town, which I'm sure we could figure something out, but it's another issue. Or I've got to get a bicycle and then bike into town once a week to get the supplies and things I need. And I think I prefer to be reasonably close to an urban environment because I'm an urbanized, normal Western person who's used to living nearish to a city at least. So yeah, I guess something like what I was doing in Queenstown, but with this what I call a unit, is what I want to do. I guess here in Middleton really is my best bet. Next couple of weeks in between working on this and doing my usual art and stuff like that, I've got a friend here who's going to take me for some bushwalks apparently. Go check out some possible sites I might be able to use longer term here. It's just a question of when you're doing camouflage and you still want to use solar power and have a view, that makes things technical. I mean, obviously camouflage is really easy if you just disappear yourself into a bush, but then it's dark and damp and cold all the time, even in summer. I prefer something that's a bit more light and airy and allows me to deploy a solar panel. So that drastically cuts down the number of sites you're able to use, but we'll get there. I'm a determined little bastard, so I'll figure something out. But that was my thought to recap for the day. Basically, the big problem with modern solutions to alternate ways to live, to solve the housing crisis and gentrification and dealing with the rising costs of living and stuff in various Western countries, all the technology and engineering is there. There are multiple solutions available. The problem is not tech or sciencey shit or physics or engineering. The problem is bureaucracy and social issues and people's attitudes. So maybe we can think about ways to correct those. People team, and life could be a lot easier and more interesting and cool and artistic for all of us. Yeah.